Let's do a test real quick. How many of the following guys are using motion controls? The correct answer is all of them. Many people are happy to think motion control has died out since the Wii, but it hasn't. A lot of people like some forms of motion control and use them frequently. Steam's controller config gives PC players more of a chance at motion than console players. It seems like a lot of people claim to hate motion control without even knowing what it means to say that, and a lot of people think motion is dead but don't realize there are people out there who use it every day. But before I start to lose all my credibility, I'd like to talk about the history of motion and why it has become so hated. The Wii was a time in Nintendo history where Nintendo realized their lovable icons could be used to bring in a casual audience to gaming. Games would be toned down in complexity and easier to control. Many games would no longer have linearity and were designed simply to be played again and again. The only problem was the controller. Non-gamers didn't want to put time into learning button combos and memorizing controller layouts, so Nintendo found a much simpler way to control games: motion control. Buttons were made large, controllers could be held with one hand and swung around. But because of the emphasis on motion control, the controllers hardly had any buttons, and Nintendo had to cut corners with more traditional games. Thus, Waggle was introduced. So, many games had you mindlessly shake the Wiimote to do actions that buttons could do better, because Nintendo just didn't have buttons to spare. Everything was going to have motion control whether they wanted it or not. This video isn't arguing to bring back this hellish time period. I don't want this just as much as the next guy, but I don't see why people say they hate motion control. In this video, I want to make it clear that motion control has indeed survived past the age of the Wii, and many mechanics from the Wii have been refined into good things. When you say you hate motion controls, you're really just saying you didn't like the way the Wii used them. I think if you listen to this video and give it time, you'll understand why motion controls are one of the best innovations in gaming history, or let alone why they should be an option for those of us that do like them. I'm going to split the video into several parts about the different types of motion controls and how they have improved over time. So let's get started. Waggle is definitely the worst offender of the Wii era motion controls. When I say waggle, I refer to the short flicks and shaking the Wii remote to replace normal button moves. Like seriously, why the hell would anyone want to shake the sideways Wii remote to roll in Donkey Kong? This stuff was shoved into every game where new buttons would have been needed. It was ridiculous, unneeded, and most of the time uncomfortable. But I will say it wasn't as bad as people blowed it out to be. Many people say that they hate motion control because they don't want to be active. But is it really hurting you so much to flick the Wiimote once in a while in Mario Galaxy? I don't think so. I can understand why it's uncomfortable, but it's not that big of a deal. Now, with that out of the way, I'm going to talk about how Waggle has evolved over time. With the introduction of the Switch and its Joy-Cons, motion control is now accessible while never losing any buttons. Therefore, Waggle was barely needed to make up for buttons, and is absolutely never a requirement anymore. However, it didn't disappear completely. My second favorite Switch game, Mario Odyssey, has a form of Waggle. Shaking the Joy-Cons to roll faster and flicking the trigger cap are optional ways of performing already performable tasks. For rolling and throwing, I almost always stick to the buttons, but when it comes to more complicated cap throws, like the spin throw, downwards throw, and upwards throw, the button combos can feel sluggish and annoying compared to the quick flicks required in motion controls. This is a perfect example of my first point. Motion controls should not be treated as a requirement. They're just another type of input that should be optional for players who find them uncomfortable, but possible for players who like the ease of it. Even if you don't like the motion of Mario Odyssey, there are plenty of people who do, and you can just ignore them. The maximum struggle you have to do with Odyssey's motion is just going to be you going, "Oh crap, they put motion control in this game? That's annoying, I won't use it." That's all it takes. Yet people act as if it's the end of the world when motion control is put into literally any game, optional or not. If you think it's uncomfortable to flick your Joy-Con downwards, that's fine by me, but I find it much easier than a complicated button combination, and there's plenty of people who use it as well. Gesture control is easily the most remembered type of motion. When I say gesture control, I'm referring to the Wii Sports level motion control, where you directly control your character in-game. This one seems to get hated because no one wants to stand up. Get your dumb realisticness out of our games. This is interesting because I have seldom met a real-life person who hasn't had a good time playing some Wii Sports. If you don't like this style of game, just don't play them. Most of the time, gesture control games were built to be fun activities that you control with your body. Just Dance, Wii Sports, Wii Play, Wii Fit, all of that stuff is gesture control. However, gestures were added to some games where they weren't needed. Trust me, I don't like it either. But I do think games built around gesture control can be very fun. If you don't want to stand up, just don't play the games. Also, I see a lot of people say I like Wii Sports, but such and such motion control game is better than one. Well, you showed you like motion control, or you can like motion control. So, let me ask you this. The dev makes an annoying and hard to deal with control scheme in a normal game. Do you blame the controller or the people who made the controls that way? The devs, of course, should get the blame, so why blame motion control as a whole for an offense that a dev made? You might point out I am forgetting a certain gesture control game. Trust me, we'll get to that later. In the meantime, let's talk about how gesture control lives on today. Games with gesture control are getting less and less common, but there are some examples out there. 1-2 Switch and Super Mario Party both have gesture-related minigames, and they can be quite fun, albeit some are better designed than others. The best thing about modern gesture is that it trims away the annoying forcing in of gesture control for no reason. I think gesture games should be separate from normal games, but can still be great fun, even if they're not just minigames, Ring Fit Adventure being a good example. While I much prefer normal games to ones that involve gesture, I couldn't tell you how giddy with excitement I would be if they announced the Wii Sports 3. Gesture has gone from being seen as just a way to control games to more of a way to make a different kind of game, and I think it is great. If you still don't want motion like this in games, and wish there was a way to play these games without them, why not go get mad at VR? It's like doubled motion, plus you have a boulder taped to your face. And it's simple, you just don't play VR. You should treat gesture games the same way. They weren't made for you, so just don't play them. Aiming on the Wii in first-person shooters was often abhorrent due to the fact you had to rotate the camera and aim using the pointer. But there was one game that allowed the fixture of the camera to shoot anyone on the current screen, Resident Evil 4 for Wii. People still absolutely blasted the motion control in this game because it ruined the game if you could just hit every single headshot like that. You were never meant to be good because you would be playing on dual stick. Some publications even made it out that you were an idiot for playing without dual stick. Well, what's wrong with having a control method that better responds to your movements? With dual stick, you have to slowly push your crosshair across the screen. And small adjustments are incredibly annoying, which is why aim assist exists. I don't know how to put this gently, but if a control method is so bad that the game has to cheat for the player, that's not good. The game should test the player's skills, not that of an AI that will automatically drag your cursor along with the enemy's head. With the pointer, you had a full range and control of everything, and it was great. This later evolved into my favorite modern motion control method, gyro. Gyro uses a sensor in your controller to tell which way you're tilting it. It opens a full range of motion and is supported by Switch, Switch Pro, and PS4 controllers. Not to mention how you can hook PS4 and Switch Pro controllers into Steam. Gyro gives you full control over your cursor in a wide range and hardly requires any movement on the player's part. It is best used when you use the stick to get the cursor close to your target and use gyro to do the heavy lifting, aka the small adjustments. You know, the ones you used to have to cheat to make on a controller? It is honestly upsetting how few PS4 games this is supported in. Switch players ask for this and receive it in nearly every third-party shooter, and that's because it is infinitely better than dual sticks. Some players can even top their results with keyboard and mouse. I personally prefer keyboard and mouse for first-person shooters, but sometimes I like to wet my willy with a little gyro. The best things gyro is used for is third-person games like Phantom Pain, Breath of the Wild, and GTA. I think the reason these games are third-person is because there's a lot of things in each that don't involve shooting, and these things feel better on a controller. So when you do whip out your bow in Zelda, it feels natural to quickly zip to each enemy using gyro. No more shitty driving with your keyboard in GTA, no more reaching across your keyboard to use abilities. Gyro can be difficult to get used to, but can easily close the gap between mouse and controller when it comes to aim. Sometimes even being better than mice for several reasons. If you were like me and disabled motion control the second you booted up Breath of the Wild, then I think you might be surprised by how fluid it really is. All this about gyro not being good for first-person shooters is just my opinion. I've seen players get even better results using gyro than mice, and vice versa. It is undoubtedly the best influence from the Wii era, and I'm very glad to have it. Players have adapted it to work the way they want, creating entirely new control methods around it. Flick stick is a form of controlling where a single flick of the joystick will rotate you 90 degrees, and the gyro arm takes it from there. The most interesting part is that the games on Steam aren't even programmed to use gyro. You have to use a PS4 controller which has gyro that's never used on the system to practically force gyro and where it isn't natively welcome. But all of this is centered around is player choice. Just because you don't like something doesn't mean it should be taken away for those who do. As a PC player, I'm already acutely aware that there are alternate inputs besides mouse and keyboard. I switch between controller and keyboard very often. So why wouldn't you try out gyro? At the very least, why wouldn't you want it as an option for those who don't have a mouse, or simply prefer it? It's not like you're going to suddenly be destroyed by players using gyro, so why even care about it if it makes others happy? Are you just that much of a jackass, or are you so adamant about the idea that anything with motion in it is bad that you won't think about how modernized and great it has become in recent years? One thing I've noticed with people who don't like gyro is that they claim that it's not good or that it's worse than mouse. I mean, yeah, obviously it may feel that way at first, but there's a learning curve. Everything has a learning curve. You have to master gyro just like people had to master mouse and keyboard when it was first used for FPSs. When the N64 first came out, there's a retroactively hilarious backlash because everyone thought that joystick was a terrible way to control Mario. Everyone wanted to use the D-pads they were familiar with. Now imagine if we had just listened then. Imagine if we were just using D-pads to move in every single game. Imagine if the standard dual stick method wasn't ever established. And I wouldn't be able to make this stupid as part of the video. Just to tell you how dual stick is bad and gyro is better. It's a learning curve you have to overcome, but if you get used to it, like me, I taught my best kill records as Scout, Demoman, and Pyro, who are my most played characters in TF2. It's a learning curve that you have to get used to and overcome. Skyward Sword is one of the most hated games of all time. Constantly used as a scapegoat and an example for why motion is bad. But is it really the motion that ruins this game? Supporters of this game claim it is a good game ruined by motion controls, but I've argued that the motion controls are the distraction from how boring this game really is. I think even without motion controls, this game still would have been bad, but I digress. Skyward Sword involves the player using motion to swing his sword and shield as well as perform other in-game activities, so if you don't have a problem with Wii Sports, you shouldn't have a problem with this game. Yes, I know it's Zelda, but it's trying to be a gesture-controlled game. If you don't like that, just don't play it. Really getting mad because they didn't just pump out another Zelda game like the snooze fest that was Twilight Princess? Yeah, I'm sorry, Twilight Princess, you are actually cool, just not very unique. This game's sword swinging is honestly very fun and akin to those of a different game, Red Steel 2, where combos were done using different directions of swinging and jabs. The problem with Skyward Sword isn't motion control itself, but how they were used. Why would every single enemy have a directional weakness? What's the fun of swinging a sword if you're restricted to only swinging it in a single direction for each enemy? Red Steel 2 doesn't have you think about which direction before every swing, you just block and then retaliate. It's quite fun and enjoyable. My second point about Skyward Sword is how people seem to act like they're being forced to be active. Is it really so hard to sit down and do small flicks with your Wiimote? No, it isn't. You might also say, well, Red Steel 2 isn't from a series like Zelda. It's its own thing. And to that I respond, Half-Life Alyx. Half-Life is the series that put Valve on the map. It is so hugely known that even Valve has made Half-Life 3 jokes. So when a new one comes out that forces you to control every single action with your real-life arms and hands, why didn't people get mad at that? Because if they didn't like VR or couldn't afford it, they just wouldn't play it. It's a motion control game, and if you don't enjoy the motion control, then don't play the game. Many newer motion control games like ARMS do have ways to control the game without motion. This is only a good thing. What I'm trying to make clear is that motion control is just another form of input, and it's demonized because of bad applications. The point is that people should be able to play any way they want. If you think that no one should enjoy something just because you don't, then that's just the worst argument of all. A lot of people seem to be under the impression that everyone hates motion, and anyone who does like it is an outlier, just a weirdo, but is that really the case? Looking up the term motion control on YouTube finds narrow set of videos about why gyro is good. These videos have quite a lot of likes and both only around 1,000 dislikes in comparison. The next video is a video from MatPat where he argues both sides of the motion control debate. Now let's take a look at the most liked comment. Oh, a comment arguing for motion controls? How could this be? Surely no one likes motion controls. Well, a lot of people do. Gyro and motion are included in many Switch games because people ask for them, and they work well in almost every case. Even when I thought I hated motion control, I would never play ARMS with the button combinations. That doesn't mean you shouldn't. PC Crowd has also heavily adopted gyro controls. The only people who don't use them are PS4 and Xbox players, which is a shame because the PS4 controllers have gyro. This would be perfect for games like Horizon, Uncharted, Last of Us, but none of the players ask for it because they're scared of the casual cooties that come with motion control. But at the self-proclaimed master race that is PC has been using your controller to get motion, is it really a casual thing? Are you scared you'll get destroyed by gyro players? Do you not try it just because everyone hates motion and you should too? Or do you just find gyro not good for anyone because you don't like it? All I'm saying is that there are many people who enjoy the concept of having motion as an option. If you don't like it, just disable it. Other people playing the game a way that's comfortable for them poses no threat to you. I couldn't imagine being so stupid as to get mad at people for what they enjoy. I did mostly just try and come up with arguments in this video to rebut. So if you have any arguments against what I said, feel free to put them in the comments so I can destroy you because I have a superior intellect. And that's about it.